الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله نبي الهدى والرحمة خاتم الأنبياء والمرسلين صلوات الله وسلامه عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن اتبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. يقول الله تبارك وتعالى في كتابه الكريم: يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد. My dear brothers and sisters, in last Friday's sermon, I humbly shared with you some thoughts and reflections on the challenge of mental illness. And I humbly mentioned that mental illness is like any other illness. And we all are prone to that. And mental illness could come in different shapes and forms. And it is similar to physical illness in a sense that it's human, it's natural. and there is nothing to be ashamed about. Today, by the will and the grace of the Almighty, I'd like to share more reflections on this important topic. And I'd like to mention two important considerations that perhaps will be helpful when we go through any form of mental illness. The first one is having realistic expectations. And the second one is having the ability to put matters and issues in perspective. Having a realistic view of what life is essential and important. Life is not all easygoing. There are moments of difficulty and hardship in life. Health does not last forever. Prosperity does not last forever. One thing we know about life is change is constant. Change is always happening, sometimes to the better, sometimes to the worse. When we have a realistic understanding of the nature of life, then our ability to deal with challenges when they come our way will be much better. Yes, as human beings, we feel sad, we feel emotionally distressed, but in the back of our mind, we know that this is the nature of life. So the level of shock when we have realistic expectation is much manageable than when we have unrealistic expectations. When we read through the Quran, the book of Revelation, we find many verses that talk about life and the nature of life and warns us from being deceived by the good things that we might have at a certain stage in our life. In the Quran we are told, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بشيء من الخوف والجوع ونقص من الأموال والأنفس والثمرات وبشر الصابرين. This verse is telling us that we'll be tested. This life is a place of test, with fear, with hunger, with loss of life, with loss of crops, all kinds of difficulties and hardship. And the verse concludes by saying, give glad tidings to those who are patient, to the sabirin. Quran also tells us that in this life we go through phases. الله الذي خلقكم من ضعف ثم جعل من بعد ضعف قوة ثم جعل من بعد قوة ضعفا وشيبة. The verse tells us that we go in this life through phases. Phase of weakness and dependency, and phase of strength and adulthood, and then again phase of weakness and dependency. So that is the nature of life. And when we truly understand the nature of life, then in the back of our mind we know that the good we have today will not last. Mentally we are prepared. And when the reality hits, our ability to deal with that will be much better than when we have a rosy picture. This certainly doesn't mean to say that we have to be pessimist. On the contrary, it means that we should enjoy the good we have today, knowing that it would not last. but also be optimist about the future, while having in the back of our mind the possibility that things could go in ways that maybe we don't like. A well-known poet in the Muslim Spain, Muslim Andalus, the historical great civilization, which at one time was the envy of nations across Europe. He saw the change of conditions in the cities of Cordoba, Tulaytula, and many other places, and he said a poem. لكل شيء إذا ما تم نقصان فلا يغر بطيب العيش إنسان. Everything when it peaks, it goes down. Nobody should ever be deceived by the comfort and the luxury of life. So having a realistic expectations as we are taught in the Quran, understanding the nature of this dunya, the nature of this world, is an important element in our ability to manage the stresses and the challenges and the mental illnesses that we might face. The second element, my dear brothers and sisters, having the ability to put matters in perspective. Sometimes when we face challenges in our life, when we face setbacks in our life, we feel angry, we feel depressed, we withdraw, and we feel the world around us falling apart. But when we look at the issue or our challenge from a broader perspective, then we might come to understand that yes, we have a challenge, but still our challenge is manageable and it's not as bad as we thought. The author of the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey, gives an example where he says one time he was riding a train and a man came with his children, and his children were out of control. They were yelling, shouting, banging. And he said, I was extremely disturbed and I became very angry. And he said, what made me angry in particular was the fact that the father was not saying anything to them. They were just rampaging the place, and he was just, his eyes were closed, and he was just as if that does not matter him. So he said, finally, I could not hold myself, and I started yelling at him and saying, what kind of children are these, and what kind of father are you? The man opened his eyes and with a sad voice said, I'm sorry. We just came from the hospital where my wife just died from cancer. Stephen Covey says, the minute I heard those words, my anger and my frustration and my stress turned into a sense of sympathy for this person. And I spent the rest of the time in the plane comforting him. So here what we see is a situation where he was extremely angry and distressed. But then when he put his own anger within a broader perspective, he came to realize that his anger and frustration was not warranted. Once I met a man who went through an accident where practically his spinal cord was destroyed. But by the grace of the Almighty, he survived, and he had multiple surgeries. The man said, I was distressed, I was angry, I was depressed, and I was saying, why me? Why God does this to me? But then another person came to my room, my roommate, and this person was a perfectly healthy person. He has a sudden illness, and doctors has to amputate all his 4 limbs. When I saw this person, he said, my anger disappeared, and I felt a sense of appreciation. I said, I still have my 4 limbs. Yes, I went through a difficult time, but I still have my limbs. I can stand, and I have a chance of walking. But this man, my roommate, doesn't have that chance. He lost all his limbs. So yes, my dear brothers and sisters, when we look at our challenges within a broader perspective, we can come to perhaps get a better understanding and appreciation. It is said that when Prophet Ayub went through a difficult time, it's said that he was wealthy, very healthy, strong man. Suddenly, he became poor and ill, and everybody abandoned him. He was asked, Ayub, why don't we see you complaining? He said, I would be ashamed to complain. I have lived for over 80 years, life of prosperity and health. And it's only the last few months that I have been struggling with this. I would be ashamed to forget all these good years and focus only on these challenging months or years I had. So yes, definitely, my dear brothers and sisters, putting matters in perspective is essential and critical. And when we do that, our perspective definitely becomes more adjusted and balanced. There are many celebrities who said after they went through a major crisis in their life, I am happy and glad this happened to me. Before that, I was living a life of illusion, surrounded by so much attention from everywhere and with so much money. I was living an artificial life. But once I went through this experience, it was an eye-opening for me. I became a real person. I came to understand the substance and the nature of life. So my dear brothers and sisters, in accordance to the teaching of our Prophet and the teaching of the Quran, let's understand the nature of this dunya, this life. And let's also put matters in perspective and believe in the greater wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That things when they happen, they happen for a reason. We might not know that reason today. We might know it tomorrow. We might know it later. But there is a greater planner, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the one who cares and who is the most kind and the most merciful. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده أما بعد. My dear brothers and sisters, in a lengthy hadith, our beloved messenger, may the peace and blessing of the Almighty be upon him, gives us a very important and powerful advice. He says, استعن بالله ولا تعجز, put your trust and seek the help of Allah, the Creator, the Almighty. ولا تعجز, do not be weak, do not incapacitate yourself. Because if you are always seeking the help of the Almighty, then there is no reason for you to give up or to lose hope. استعن بالله, seek the help of Allah. ولا تعجز, do not be weak, do not be incapacitated, do not give up, do not withdraw, do not lose hope. وإن أصابك شيء فقل قدر الله وما شاء فعل. And if something undesirable happens to you, say, Allah decreed, the Almighty decreed, and whatever He decrees happens. So accept it graciously, patiently. And He warns us, وَلَا تَقُلْ لَوْ كَانَ كَذَا وَكَذَا فإن ذلك يفتح عمل الشيطان أو كما قال الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم. And do not sit saying, if this was this or this was that, because that will open the gates or the door for the devil to whisper and to misguide you. So yes, we can learn lessons from what happened in the past. But what happened in the past has happened. We cannot change it. It's a closed chapter. We should not be hostage to our past. We learn from the past, we move forward. We know that happened for a reason, and we accept it graciously. The word as-sabirin, the patient, has been mentioned many times in the Quran. So let's be among those who are gracious and patient when something undesirable happens to them, and those who are grateful and thankful when something pleasing happened to them. Our beloved messenger taught one companion, Abu Umama, a beautiful supplication, a beautiful dua, a man who was facing some sadness and worry. And let's repeat this beautiful dua. اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من الهم والحزن ونعوذ بك من العجز والكسل ونعوذ بك من الجبن والبخل ونعوذ بك من غلبة الدين وقهر الرجال. اللهم بارك لنا في جمعنا هذا، اللهم اغفر لنا وارحمنا وعافنا واعف عنا وتجاوز عن سيئاتنا. اللهم إنا نسألك الهدى والتقى والعفاف. ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم. قوموا إلى صلاتكم يرحمكم الله. الله يبارك فيك، الله يبارك فيك.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
استووا اعتدلوا. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. سبح اسم ربك الأعلى الذي خلق فسوى والذي قدر فهدى والذي أخرج المرعى فجعله غثاء أحوى سنقرئك فلا تنسى إلا ما شاء الله إنه يعلم الجهر وما يخفى ونيسرك لليسرى فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى سيذكر من يخشى ويتجنبها الأشقى الذي يصلى النار الكبرى ثم لا يموت فيها ولا يحيا قد أفلح من تزكى وذكر اسم ربه فصلى بل تؤثرون الحياة الدنيا والآخرة خير وأبقى إن هذا لفي الصحف الأولى صحف إبراهيم وموسى. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. هل أتاك حديث الغاشية وجوه يومئذ خاشعة عاملة ناصبة تصلى نارا حامية تسقى من عين آنية ليس لهم طعام إلا من ضريع لا يسمن ولا يغني من جوع وجوه يومئذ ناعمة لسعيها راضية في جنة عالية لا تسمع فيها لاغية فيها عين جارية فيها سرر مرفوعة وأكواب موضوعة ونمارق مصفوفة وزرابي مبثوثة أفلا ينظرون إلى الإبل كيف خلقت وإلى السماء كيف رفعت وإلى الجبال كيف نصبت وإلى الأرض كيف سطحت فذكر فذكر إنما أنت مذكر لست عليهم بمسيطر إلا من تولى وكفر فيعذبه الله العذاب الأكبر إن إلينا إيابهم ثم إن علينا حسابهم. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.